Xenoblade Genesis. Oh boy, can't wait to do it all again. For the past while now, I've had this grand plan to do a really deep dive into all the source material that inspired Xeno, into a massive multi-hour video essay in preparation for the next game. But apparently I vastly underestimated Monolith's productive output yet again, so here we are, me having given nothing. So instead of trying to do that all at once, I think it might be a better idea at this point to break it down into smaller chunks and talk about what's relevant to Genesis specifically for now. Maybe down the line, if we get more information, start talking about everything else, as it's all going to be relevant eventually. It always comes back around. We only have the short reveal trailer to go off of for now, but I think there's still plenty of interesting stuff that's definitely worth talking about. I'm not really going to focus on the characters or actual plot at all. That's still all up in the air, and I'm sure there's plenty of people who have already looked frame by frame to every last minute detail. It's a lot more than I could ever do. I'm personally, for now, more interested in kind of the broader strokes ideas for the time being. While the art style, settings, characters all look very novel for a Xeno game, stuff we've never quite seen before, which seems to always be the goal with Takahashi, to make something brand new every time. Closer inspection, of course, gives you plenty of familiarities to the Xeno lifeblood that we all know and love by now. In fact, the literal very first word said in the trailer is Anima, so I think we all know where this is going. First though, I want to talk about the name of the world, revealed not in the trailer, but by a Twitter post by Monolith a little bit later. And the name of the world is Anshar. So, Anshar is a deity in ancient Mesopotamian mythology, but the exact specifics of the mythology of that time is really messy, with several different creation myths, gods, theogonies, spread across several different locations and time periods in ancient Mesopotamia. Everything was written on tablets, and typically things get mixed up, and it's difficult to kind of pin together. There's lost tablets, it's hard to read writing, translations aren't always perfect, so there is a lot of mess in terms of figuring out exactly how everything comes together. But in this case, the name Anshar comes from one of these creation myths, known as the Enuma Elish. The exact date and writing is hard to pin down of this, but most estimates put it in the rough range between the years of about 1900 and 1100 BC. The Enuma Elish starts with nothing but the two primordial waters of creation. These being the saltwater Tiamat, Xenosaga 1 flashbacks, and the freshwater Apsu. The union of these two divine beings results in the creation of the mixing of the two waters and starts to form the world as they knew it. These two deities led to the creation of two more, Lamu and Lahamu, who themselves go on to create two more deities, Anshar and Kishar. Along with Apsu's vizier, named Mumu, there are 7 primordial entities in this creation myth. The name Anshar comes from An, which simply means sky or heaven, and Shar, meaning in completeness or in totality. That means his name is the entire sky or entire heaven. His counterpart deity, Kishar, her name means Ki, meaning earth, and Shar again meaning completeness or totality, meaning in total. She represents the total earth. So together, they represent the entirety of the heavens and the earth. The creation myth continues with the creation of even more gods. Eventually, a conflict arises between them, in which Anshar's grandson, Ea, kills Apsu, the primordial freshwater deity. Tiamat, therefore, declares a war against the rest of the gods. Ea's son, Marduk, is then made the one as the champion to oppose Tiamat. Anshar supports Marduk in this effort, and in the end succeeds against Tiamat, which leads Marduk to become the king of the new Mesopotamian pantheon in this creation myth. And this led to Marduk being worshipped in a way that was very similar to Zeus in Greek mythology or Jupiter in Roman mythology. This is actually about the extent of Anshar's significance in the Mesopotamian culture. He wasn't worshipped very much as Marduk was. He was mainly more of a historical figure as a primordial entity in this specific creation myth. He's only very briefly mentioned elsewhere. Kishar is even less so. In fact, she doesn't even have a part in the myth other than her name alone. So, going back to Xenoblade, that makes Anshar an interesting choice for the name of the world. There's no mention of Kishar at all, of course, in the trailer, despite the two of them oftentimes making a pair together, and there are plenty of other deities in the mythology in that text alone with more significance. I'll move on from this for now, but there's definitely more to that. Now, let's go back to the very first word said in the trailer, Anima. Now, if you've played Xenogears or Xenosaga, this name obviously sticks out. It's a pretty important term in both of those. Anima is simply soul in Latin, and there are actually two common use cases of the word. The first one is the anima mundi, which literally means the soul of the world. This is a very common concept in a lot of different belief systems, notably Gnosticism, which is also heavily drawn from in a variety of different Xeno concepts. The Gnostics believed that the beginning of existence was a single entity known as the monad. The monad created a series of other beings known as the aeons. Together they made up a divine place known as the proloma. One of these aeons was known as Sophia, and either a flaw or a desire, depending on what source material you're reading from, within Sophia resulted in the creation of the lower material world through her imperfection. This lower material world, the one we live in, also resulted in the creation of the demiurge, named Yaldabaoth. Another familiar name there. While the demiurge is the false god and the one in control of this lower material world, Sophia still exists and remains as the anima mundi despite that. The second use is another one popularly used in Xeno, and these terms were coined by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. Jung uses the terms both anima and animus to represent the unconscious feminine traits within a man and the unconscious masculine traits within a woman, respectively. Jung had a long and complicated relationship with Gnosticism, and a lot of his fundamental psychological theories were created out of a result of his own self-exploration with Gnosticism. A very important concept in Gnosticism that likely caused these ideas to form, at least in some part, is the idea of the syzygy. The syzygy is known as a sort of pairing between two entities. Jung considered the anima and animus to be a syzygy together. This is an extremely common theme in Xeno as a whole, which, Takahashi himself has even gone on the record describing the central theme of Xeno to be about foreign things coming together. We see this in Xenogears with the one-winged angels in Nissan. The literal exact same imagery was directly reused in Future Redeemed between A and Alpha, both possessing a single wing, Chaos and Cosmos in Xenosaga, the list goes on and on. But now, if you recall, that sounds awfully familiar to the original Sumerian creation myth too, doesn't it? The syzygy between Apsu and Tiamat that led to the creation of everything else, Lamu and Lahamu, Anshar and Kishar. And once again, that question presents itself. If this syzygy, this pairing, is so important, and we have Anshar, where is Kishar? The trailer then goes on to say that every force that gave shape to this world was the manifestation of the anima that flows through this land. Now, that pretty clearly makes it sound like anima is a fundamental force behind the world of Anshar, which is exactly what the anima mundi is. And this is not the first time we've seen an anima mundi in Xeno either. In fact, we've literally had the anima mundi as a set of playable characters. Shulk, Rex, and A, previously Alpha, being the physical avatars of the anima mundi of Ionios. So it is very possible that, much like Ionios, Anshar has some kind of avatar as well. The anima of Anshar is said to give way to the forces of fire, water, and wind. Now, these are three classical elements, which is an extremely common idea across a variety of belief systems, common in lots of media as well. Usually, though, it tends to be four. I guess in the case of China's Wuxing, it's actually five. But in this case, we're looking at four, the four being fire, water, wind, and earth. Yet, it seems like in Anshar so far, there's been no mention of the Earth at all. Does that mean that Earth is missing? Now, where have I heard that before? We're missing Earth. Now, the other pretty obvious defining feature of Anshar is its topography, which is to say the ground is definitely curving the wrong way. It seems to curve all the way up and around, making the world some sort of annulus. Now, there are three ways that you can make an annulus world: a ring, a cylinder, or a sphere. Rings, like you see in Halo, or cylinders are both pretty popular ways to get artificial worlds in a lot of science fiction. That's because they give you a shape with a good central axis of rotation. If you rotate the entire world around that axis sufficiently quickly, it results in an outward centrifugal force towards the ground, making for a perfect simulation of the gravity in the world. Spheres don't have that same kind of ability. No matter which way you spin the sphere, the centrifugal forces are going to get weird in one place or another. Additionally, the shape of a sphere is the exact shape such that no matter where you are inside of one, the gravitational attraction from the outer shell of the world always cancels to zero. That means if you can't spin it, you can't use traditional gravity, that means you need to come up with some other way to generate force to simulate the gravity. Perhaps a point in the center of the sphere supplying an equal repulsive force in all directions, maybe? Interesting. But also at the same time, this is a Xenoblade game, and it would definitely not be the first time that gravity made no sense. Looking at you, Bionis. There are a few specific shots in the trailer though, looking at Lukos from a couple of directions, that look to be pretty much 45-degree angle offset from one another. And if you look on the edges of both of those images, it seems like the curve of the world extends upwards in both directions, which would have to imply a spherical world. A ring world, of course, you see the edge and off the world sufficiently far away. In the cylinder, you'd have to have at least one flat direction. The fact that you have two curves perpendicular to each other implies that it have to be a sphere at least. Speaking of a point source in the center of a sphere, how about those suns? There's 6 of them in total, with 5 smaller suns, and then a larger one that is seemingly gone at times. And while that one's gone, it's nighttime. I guess the other suns aren't bright enough to make it light out. Also, during the nighttime shots, it looks like there's almost seems like a bunch of stars in the night sky, which that can't make sense if the world loops on itself. But if you look closely, it actually seems like every single one of those tiny little star-like objects are actually just little specks of light that are the exact same shade of green. So I have to imagine that something is causing them to appear rather than being literal actual stars in the enclosed space that is the world. Now, interestingly, the number 6 has come up fairly frequently recently in Xenoblade especially. The intersection between the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2 occurs at exactly 6 o'clock. The 6 members of Ouroboros, and of course the 6 cores of the Ares Prime. Now, interestingly, the number 6 has historically often been attributed to incompleteness and imperfection. In the book of Genesis in the Bible, the 6th day was the day mankind was created, while the 7th was the sacred day of rest. The book of Revelation goes further and posits that 666 is the number of mankind and the beast. The number 7, on the other hand, though, is generally a number that has a significance of completeness, or maybe rather 6 plus 1 would be more accurate. Again, going back to the Enuma Elish Mesopotamian creation myth, the 3 pairs of the primordial deities, plus 1 more in the Vizier Mumu, makes 7, as well as several other gods and pantheons that result in 7 in Mesopotamian culture. It was a significant number to them. There were 6 days of creation in the Bible. The 7th was for a day of rest, making 7 total in the Genesis creation. And once again, you see exactly that in Xeno. There are the 6 Ouroboros, with Guernica Vandam acting as the 7th in terms of the initial activation of the Ouroboros stone in Chapter 1. There are 7 chapters in the game entirely. There are 6 houses in the city, with the 7th secret founder. The first interlink in the fight against Alpha, there are 6 Ouroboros users who come together through the joining of Logos and Numa of the Trinity Processor in the Sword and Fists of the End. Literally, lucky 7. In X again, Al himself says that the 6 cores alone won't cut it. What does the Eris need to run? A living body. 6 plus 1. But then you jump back to Anshar and what? 5 smaller suns and 1 big one? 5 plus 1? That doesn't make any sense. Look, even this plant here has 7 buds on it. Does that mean one of the smaller suns is missing? Huh. There sure do seem to be a lot of missing things here in Anshar. The Anshar of the whole sky is missing his Syzygy, and Kishar the whole earth. The classical elements of fire, water, and wind are missing their last element of earth. The 5 small suns seem to be missing their 6 to make 7 suns in total. Oh, and what's that at the end there? The vengeance of a fallen god has yet to be fulfilled. Makes you think, doesn't it? Thanks for watching. So far this is just a small first look at Anshar in the 2 minutes we got roughly, but even that of course had a ton to go off of given the rich history of Xeno. I still have a lot more notes and history that have gone into the series, such that this is really only scratching the surface of everything. For instance, all the sci-fi inspirations across the games that so far in Genesis we only have small hints of. But of course, if more interesting things show up in the future worth talking about, I'll definitely be open to making more of these. That's it for now though. Thanks again.